make a very controversial statement to start the Viking Update show in the wake of the Super Bowl. I guess winning 3 straight Super Bowls is really hard.
It turns out that it is. Yeah, that is a bold and controversial statement, but it proved to be incredibly accurate. It is very hard to win 3 in a row.
Yes. Let's get into why it is, and let's get into what went wrong for the Chiefs, what went right for the Eagles, and what it all might mean for the Vikings as they try to get to that level. This is the Viking Update Show. Viking Update Show is brought to you from the Aquarius Home Services Studio and presented to you by Giggly THC Beverages and OnX Hunt. Giggly THC Beverages is a promo code if you want to get 50% off your first order, and I highly recommend this stuff. My wife are drinking it all the time. Use code GIGLYNORTH, G-I-G-L-I North, to get 50% off your first order at giggly.com, G-I-G-L-I.com. Tell you more about that later. Thanks again to OnX Hunt, our other presenting sponsor. So I'm watching that game, and it just gave you the reminder that as much as you need a great quarterback, an outstanding quarterback to get in the fight and to win Super Bowls, sometimes it comes down to offensive line play, blocking, tackling, and simple schemes. And the Eagles were just a better team in almost every way.
Yeah, they were. I mean, you and I had talked last week about believing that the Eagles had the best overall roster. But my kind of thinking was going back to something that Kevin Stefanski told me when he was offensive coordinator of the Vikings, is that the most important things for a team are head coach and quarterback. And I thought that Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes just gave Kansas City enough of an edge there to overcome whatever shortcomings they had for the rest of the roster. Clearly, I was wrong. The Eagles were not just better top to bottom, they were overwhelmingly better than Kansas City. And the way that they controlled the front, the pass rush without any blitzing was unbelievable. I also do think, Jim, that the Chiefs' lack of a real go-to wide receiver hurt them, in this matchup as well. And so just what you saw from start to finish was one team just completely overwhelming the other. And we have talked about Kansas City's sort of like, how good are they? They win all these close game stuff all year long, but there's no world that I saw them being down 34-0 and Patrick Mahomes having 20 passing yards in the first half. I mean, that was an incredible display by the Eagles to just completely dominate them.
It was remarkable. I thought we saw a couple of interesting developments in this game too. Jalen Hurts, I don't think anybody ranks him in the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL, maybe not in the top 6. But, after some early season problems where he and Sirianni had to get on the same page, and after him being injured, and after that passing game taking a backseat because Saquon Barkley was so dominant, when it really mattered, he threw the ball great. And he ran the ball great. And they have the brotherly shove, which I don't think should be a play, but it does work. And it is an impressive thing for a guy with his leg strength to be able to monopolize that stratagem. So I think Jalen Hurts was probably better than we wanted to give him credit for being. And Travis Kelce is probably older than we realized. He's a great player, but you saw in that game, they don't have the outside receiver anymore who really scares you. And they were not able to just have the bailout play to Travis Kelce where you throw it a dink pass over the middle and he beats his own by breaking 3 tackles. I mean, what he did was so special, and it wasn't going to last forever.
Yeah, but it also is kind of remarkable, like how quickly it came.
Yeah,
I mean, because he was effective in the playoffs prior to the Super Bowl, and was he prime Travis Kelce? No, he wasn't, but he certainly was a factor and someone that you had to worry about in the Chiefs offense. But man, in that Super Bowl, he just looked old and slow, both in the passing game and then when he was trying to block those pass rushers for the Eagles, Sweat and all those dudes, like they just went right by him. So that was startling to me. I do think that there were at least one or two throws from Mahomes that toward him that were, I think, off the mark that he did. He would have been a really hard to catch either way, but still, you just did not see him find those areas in the zone and just, kind of freelance his way to 12-yard gains, 18-yard gains, 15-yard gains like that. He just looked like a complete non-entity at all. And to see it, fall off that quickly, I don't know. I do wonder about, does he think about, hey, maybe I'm done here. Maybe this is it. Or does he think, I don't want to go out like this. I want to have one more season. But it sure looks like, if he decided to retire, in a couple of weeks and just said, I don't have it anymore, I wouldn't blame him for it, because there was nothing on Sunday that looked like he belonged on that field with those young, hungry, nasty defenders that he was going up against.
Exactly right. Pretty fascinating game. Not an entertaining game, but fascinating game, because I find blowouts in big games, again, not to be fun, but to be fascinating. I mean, for one team to dominate another, to dominate a team of the Chiefs' pedigree to that extent, I mean, so many things have to go right. And now, let's transition to talking about the Vikings and all the decisions they have to make. I do think it's time for McCarthy to be the primary quarterback in this organization. I do think it makes sense to let Darnold go. I think it makes sense for Daniel Jones to be the transition quarterback. But we just talked about the fact that it's not all about the quarterback. The Eagles had the best offensive line in football. They have the best running back in football. They have the best defense in football. The Vikings aren't going to magically leapfrog the Eagles in all those categories in one offseason. But how can they get closer to that standard?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's inconceivable for them to make up a lot of ground, Jim, in the gap between the two teams. And it is clear there's a big gap for sure. I mean, I think Howie Roseman and that Eagles front office has done a terrific job of drafting and developing, because that is the thing with Kwesi Adofo-Mensah so far, is the drafting has not been great. And so what you're seeing from the Eagles with Devontae Smith and Jalen Carter and Cooper DeJean and like all of these guys, they're just drafting dudes and they're really panning out and playing very well. And so the long-term recipe for the Vikings is to do a better job drafting and making sure that you get young people in that in a year or two can develop into really good players for you. But in the interim, while you are doing that and trying to improve your draft process, they have plenty of money to spend. They have a great reputation among players around the league for being an organization that is player friendly, that is good for players to come to, with the amenities of the training facility that they have, with the way that the Wilfs run the operation with Kevin O'Connell and Brian Flores, and how well coached they are and how accommodating they are. They should be able to go out and recruit several impactful free agents with the money that they have to spend, whether that is interior offensive line, whether that is defensive line, defensive back. They have a lot of holes to address and fill, but they also have the means and the reputation to go out there and be effective in the recruiting game. And so I do foresee a scenario where once the open market happens, the Vikings make a big splash or two, and they feel really good about addressing areas of need going into this offseason. And then if you do that with, let's say, 3 players, then all of a sudden you're in really good shape with the team that won a bunch of games in this regular season, with a interesting, intriguing, exciting young quarterback, with the best receiver in football, all of that. You have a lot going for you, and it doesn't take an overall here. It just takes some smart signings, and it would really help if they could land 1 or 2 players in the draft that would be ready to contribute right away.
Next, let's talk about Kwesi's situation. We're talking here on Tuesday morning, 2 days after the Super Bowl, and Kwesi still hasn't signed his new extension that we all think is on the table or being negotiated. Let's also talk about the offensive line, and then we'll get into some of their NFL and Vikings issues. For the moment, want to let you know that you should keep the good times rolling without the regrets. Giggly THC beverages are your go-to for bold flavor and smooth vibes, 0 alcohol, no bad decisions. Just THC-infused cocktails, seltzers, and teas packed with natural ingredients and performance-boosting superfoods like ashwagandha and ginseng. Find Giggly at more than 500 locations like Total Wine, MGM, and Cub Foods, or shop online at Giggly.com, Gigli.com. Ready to upgrade your drink game? Use the code GIGLYNORTH, Gigli North, for 50% off your first order. Giggly, sip smarter, feel better. Also want to let you know that ice fishing is here, and it's time to hit the frozen water with OnX Fish. The Fish app is the most comprehensive fishing tool for increasing your confidence on ice. Use OnX Fish to find new places to fish and sort lakes by species, abundance, trophy, and keeper potentials. OnX Fish also shows you hot spots, lake by lake regulations, and private and public land ownership information. For a limited time, download OnX Fish for free in Minnesota or Wisconsin, or go to onxmaps.com/fish to get more information on the app that is changing the game on ice. Now our TalkNorth.com colleague, Michael Russo, for Clamshell Beach Resorts.
Hey, have you been dreaming of a lake cabin lifestyle with boating, fishing, and family fun in northern Minnesota? Well, lately I've thought a lot about how cool it would be to have a getaway like so many Minnesotans. And if you're like me, you probably think that owning your own lakeside getaway is beyond your budget. Well, if you think lake cabin real estate prices keep going up, well, think again. This is Russo, and I'm here to tell you there is an affordable way to enjoy a cabin lifestyle and all that goes with it. And yes, I said affordable. I founded a Clamshell Beach Resort, which is located on the Whitefish chain of 14 lakes for you and your family to enjoy. Here's how. Clamshell has lake homes that offer deeded fractional ownership, and the keywords there are deeded and fractional. You own it. Imagine having 5 weeks a year to enjoy Clamshell with its beaches, pool, and lodge that's full of kids' activities. Is golf your game? There's a great golf course right across the road. Like winter sports? Well, you can go ice fishing, cross-country skiing, or snowmobiling right out the door at Clamshell. And there's no maintenance, no grass mowing, no snow removal. It's done all for you. And you can own a share of Clamshell Beach Resort at an affordable price. To learn more about ownership opportunities at Clamshell Beach Resort, go to cottagesonwhitefish.com or contact Pat Egan at 612-220-9819. That's cottagesonwhitefish.com or Pat Egan at 612-220-9819.
So it's mildly intriguing that Kwesi hasn't gotten his deal done yet. Now, I also think that the NFL doesn't really like teams making a lot of news during Super Bowl week. So the deal could have been done last Monday and they just wouldn't announce it until this week. By the time people hear this show, they might have announced the deal. Do you find it intriguing at all that it hasn't gotten done yet?
I mean, it is slightly intriguing, Jim. I mean, Kevin got his deal done. And so I do think that there is some merit, certainly, to trying to stay off the radar from a newsmaking perspective during the week of Super Bowl. That is a real thing that the league emphasizes with its teams, that teams are generally amenable to doing, unless it's some kind of hiring or firing that they feel like just has to happen. You will see teams kind of delay announcements like this. So I still expect the deal to be done. It's, given the progress that has been made over the last year under Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, I think that he is in line and deserving of sticking around and continuing to make decisions here. But until something happens, until there is a real announcement and until there is a signing on the dotted line, you always wonder a little bit. We have talked about it before on the show, but Kwesi is a different guy. Like, he kind of runs his business, differently than the conventional NFL general manager does. And I think that he embraces that. And so is there something a little bit complicated or funky in these negotiations? There could be. Again, I don't anticipate that, but that's what happens while you're waiting for this, is you start to concoct things and wonder if there's things going wrong. But I would, in the end of the day, I would be shocked if something happened where there wasn't a deal announced within the next week or so, now that we've moved on from the pageantry of Super Bowl Sunday.
Agreed. And I also think that for better or worse, Kwesi prides himself on thinking differently and acting differently. And I just wonder if that has anything to do with the delay, that he just maybe he doesn't want to look desperate. Maybe he's holding out for something. I don't know. And we may never know, but like you, I would expect an announcement within the next week or so. Let's talk about
real quick, just on that. He's real prideful. Like, there's no question that this guy has a lot of inner self-confidence and believes, self-worth, all of those things. I think those are all really important things. So if there was something that came up during these negotiations, I do think that, there are some people who will get in these negotiations and be like, yeah, okay, whatever. I want to sign and get the money and get squared away. I think that I could see a scenario where Kwesi just negotiates for different reasons than ultimately just money, or looks at things in a different perspective that might make it just less straightforward than some of these other situations might be.
Agreed. Well said. All right, let's move to the offensive line. The Vikings, Darisaw will be back healthy next year. They have excellent offensive tackles. The interior of the line gets blamed for a lot of the team's problems. And I don't think that's inaccurate. I just think it's overstated sometimes. Bradbury obviously has trouble with powerhouse nose tackles. Hell, I remember when Matt Burke had trouble with powerhouse nose tackles. It happens.
Right.
The guards are not great. I'm also not sure they're quite as bad. I just think the default position for the Viking fan who wants to defend his quarterback is to blame everything on the offensive line. I'm not sure this offensive line is all that far away from being, a very good offensive line. Now, you might need one more. You might need one really excellent guard to balance the middle. But I don't think it's going to be that. I don't think it would be that hard to fix this group.
I agree with you, Jim. It's not. They do not need to be overhauled. This is not a disastrous offensive line. I think units like Chicago's, like others come to mind that are just terrible. That is not the Vikings. They have made big strides and big improvements over the last couple of years. And certainly you have the two tackles you feel great about. I honestly do wonder, if I'm making any changes up front to that interior offensive line, I wonder if Garrett Bradbury, it seems like he is the one that you look at in terms of undersized, not fitting the typical profile of a center. And so, I just look, I do think, maybe it is a guard, but the two guards are more aligned. Those look like NFL guards. Garrett Bradbury is just, he's a small guy, and I think he's really smart. And overall, he's had a solid career here, actually lasted longer than I thought he would at the start of it. But it feels like they just need something more. They need more gravitas right in the middle to kind of hold everything down, someone a little bigger, a little stronger. And I do think if even just that one change could make a big difference. And so will that be the change? I don't know. But that's just, my very casual offensive line mind looking at what they have at the positions and how they fit the profiles of their positions. And Bradbury is the one that seems to be just uncharacteristically small for that spot.
Let's continue that conversation. First, I do want to thank Aquarius Home Services.
Scott for Aquarius Home Services. Time for a cold weather check-in. If your furnace sounds like sneakers tumbling in a dryer, it just might be time for a little TLC. Right now, enjoy $98 off any furnace repair with Aquarius. Give your home the warmth it's been not so subtly asking for. A worry-free furnace is just a click away at AquariusHomeservices.com. Aquarius, earning the right to be recommended and keeping you cozy all winter long.
I also want to let you know that I do shop at Twill. TwillMN.com is the website. Twill in the Dining Galleria. Twill by Scott Dayton. That's the location. And when I go in there, I spend my own money. I do not ask for discounts. They do have a 40% off sale right now. They don't have many sales, but they're trying to clear out some winter stuff because they have so much beautiful stuff coming in for the spring. So many bright colors. I'll tell you what I got last time I went in there. I got some Dingman shoes. They're those kind of modern, I'm an old school dude. They're the modern shoes that they look like a cross between dress shoes and tennis shoes, or Nikes or whatever. And you can wear them with a suit, you can wear jeans, you can wear with anything. I've always wanted some of those. I got them. They're incredibly comfortable. Those are the kind of shoes you put on, and they're incredibly comfortable from the first second you're on. You don't put them on and think, oh, I'm going to have to break these in. They're great to wear. I also got some Bearcat t-shirts. Basically, Scott has cleared out a lot of his other t-shirts because he loves the Bearcat t-shirt so much. And they're that fabric that they're just really comfortable. You can wear them by themselves when it's warm out. You can wear them under a dress shirt, or you can wear them under a jacket. These are nice enough for that. Those kind of t-shirts, I highly recommend those. Also, the Johnny O quarter zips and pullovers. Again, really comfortable, beautiful colors. They're going to be great for the spring, great for golf, great for hanging out on your deck. Those are the things I recommend right now. Go to twillmn.com to check out all the different companies Scott works with. Scott curates. He's very picky about who he does work with. Or just go to Twill in the Dining Galleria, tell him Talk North sent you, tell them I sent you, and say hello. They're friendly, they're low key, they're helpful. It'll be the best shopping experience you've ever had. So to go back to Bradbury, he's got one more year left on his contract for a little less than $5 million. The easy thing to do will be just to play out the contract, hope that he can play a role, hope that you can surround him with good enough guards that he has some help when he faces a powerhouse guy. That's usually the way NFL teams do it. If you do cut him, then you save a little bit of money, but then you'll be also spending money on a new center. My guess is they play it out with him.
Yeah, it's entirely possible that happens. I mean, certainly he's got respect in the locker room. I mean, he works his butt off, and I think, like I said before, I think he's carved out more of a career than I thought he was going to at a point earlier in his career, where in year 1 or year 2, you're like, ugh, is this guy going to last at all? So that would, from a financial standpoint, it may make sense. I mean, if they really do need to use all of their resources to, whether it's go get a guard, whether it's, defensive tackle, defensive back, cornerbacks aren't cheap. Like they could have to liquidate a lot of their cash to sign those folks. And so maybe it does become a point where it's like, we can't upgrade clearly at center right now, so let's keep him for one more year and ride it out. That's a real possibility for it. I just do wonder how viable that will be going into next season. I mean, it does seem like, we can say, of course he struggles with Aaron Donald. Everyone does. Of course he struggles with Jalen Carter. Everyone does. But I think there's more and more of those guys that are coming in every year, and you're having to face those guys kind of week in and week out. And so that would be a challenge if the status quo is at center. But maybe they can pick up a guard or two that would help alleviate some of that.
One thing you said is, size really matters on offensive line in the modern NFL. Mm-hmm. The Eagles won the Super Bowl with probably the largest offensive line in NFL history. I mean, these guys are massive. They're talented. They move well too. They are massive. There's really no substitute for having a huge body between, the defensive line and your running back and your quarterback. And they just don't have that in Bradbury. You're absolutely right about that. Brandel and Reisner, I think they're okay. But this is another area where they spent a high draft pick on Bradbury. He has not lived up to his draft status, and they spent a relatively high pick on Ed Ingram, who got benched last year. And that's, again, where the drafting has hurt them. Yeah,
and just for clarity, it was Spielman, right, that did Bradbury.
So Spielman took Bradbury. Kwesi took Ingram. Yes,
Ed Ingram. Yep. So, but either way, you're right. They have not cashed in on those opportunities. And when you look at drafting offensive linemen, spending a first round pick on a center is unconventional. But usually you can find contributors at center, at guard, lower in the draft. And so they have to find a way to be a little bit better with talent evaluation, to be a little more resourceful, because when you look at how you allocate your free agent funds, you should be able to say we see 2 or 3 guard centers that we could go target in the draft, because those guys can usually come in and start right away. There is generally a smaller learning curve for offensive linemen than there is for some other positions. So to me, it would seem like the smart thing to do would be to use the draft and the few draft picks that they do have to maybe target that area, and then go out and spend money on a more established defensive tackle, on a more established, defensive back, cornerback, safety. If Harrison Smith doesn't come back, you take a look at, there are other areas of need that are maybe a little bit better situated for using your free agent money versus the draft money. But yeah, missing on Ed Ingram, pseudo missing on Garrett Bradbury, those are the kinds of mistakes that get you chasing your tail right now and putting them into the position that they are, just a cut below the upper tier in the NFC.
Yeah. And now we can talk about the secondary too. And the Vikings for quite a while now have been putting high draft picks on secondary players who have not earned it. Harrison Smith, long time ago, was a great pick. Give Spielman complete credit for that. That was a great pick. But they, Lewis Seen, Andrew Booth Jr., Dantzler. I mean, they've had so many cornerbacks fail. And of course, they had the tragedy this summer that cost them a chance at having somebody who could have helped them this year and in the future, which is just, horrifyingly bad luck. But they have, in general, not been able to bolster the secondary with draft choices, and that's catching up with them. Yeah,
and you look at kind of the story of Kwesi too. Like Byron Murphy Jr. was a great signing.
Yep.
Like that. So when he goes out and gets and identifies and scouts and looks at established NFL talent that has done it and has a track record, he seems to be pretty good at identifying those guys and bringing guys in that can be very, very helpful. What has eluded him to this point is looking at the draft picks and how they project from college to the NFL. Maybe Kyrie Jackson would have been a great player. I'm not sure. And so, in some ways you're graded against that. Jordan Addison's turned out to be really, really good. Like that, I feel really good about that pick. But you would like to see a little bit more, especially later in the drafts, that say, okay, like this guy found a good talent, found one that fits in this system, and now he's plug and play for the next 3 or 4 years on a very modest contract. And that's the thing that is the market inefficiency that they have not yet tapped into here in Minnesota with this regime. And I think that they really need to. And again, I can't remember how many picks they have, but it's not many this year. And so they're going to have to be much more efficient and effective in that area because they just don't have margin for error. And it's probably another, this is probably a bigger topic. We can get into it in more detail in future shows, but just to put a cap on all this, listen, if you believe Sam Darnold could win a Super Bowl for you, you'd spend whatever it took to keep him. Mm-hmm. But right now, to keep Sam Darnold probably costs you $40 million, probably costs you $40 million. And that would basically wipe out your free agency money, which they desperately need to spend on other positions right now. Yeah. And that's what I do wonder. I would not have hesitated much to pay $40 million to the Sam Darnold we got for the first 15 weeks. Right. It's like, okay, he has earned it. That's it. But given what we saw in the last 2 games of the season, this sort of ideal, I think the perfect world approach would have been Sam Darnold finishing strong. Maybe they don't go to the Super Bowl, but maybe they win a playoff game, doesn't work out in the NFC title game or something. And you say, okay, we're going to franchise tag this guy and we're going to have him for at least 1 more year, see how that goes. And then we'll make a decision on JJ McCarthy, whether he's the guy or whether Darnold's the guy long-term after that. But given what we saw in the last 2 games of the season, it really does change your evaluation of Sam Darnold, and it makes it more likely that he is not a $40 million quarterback, and that to get more of a kind of bridge deal done for let's say a 2-year deal, you're probably still looking at 30 to 35 million, somewhere in there. And really he is maybe a 15 to $20 million quarterback, and is what we saw there. And so I just think that it makes the most sense to say, if it would even, with the franchise tag not available, and we're not going to franchise this guy and have him make $45 million next year. That's just not going to happen. Well, then you got to let him go. Let him go to the Raiders, let him go somewhere else, and just go all in with JJ McCarthy and spend that money to surround him with the right support like Jalen Hurts has. I think that Jalen Hurts is a very, very good quarterback. Do I think that he is the most physically gifted guy out there? No, he's an incredible runner. He's a good thrower. He played incredibly well in the Super Bowl, but there's 5 guys that I would probably take over him in just in terms of overall talent and skill level. So I think that's the model with McCarthy now, is you invest heavily on the offensive line, make sure that his receivers and his tight ends are set, which they largely are. See what you do at running back, but he's got to have a difference maker there, whether it's Aaron Jones, whether it's someone else, and have him start next season with a good offensive line in front of him with plenty of weapons around him. And then you can kind of maximize his development and get a chance to really duplicate what you did this year with Sam Darnold for even less money.
Yep. Well said. We're going to continue to talk about all these things. We have the NFL scouting combine coming up. We have draft speculation, free agency speculation, and some free agent reality. We'll also keep you updated on the Quezzy news as we go forward. Please also check out John Krasinski's show. It's our basketball show here at TalkNorth.com. We have Russo on hockey, Mike Grimm on the Gophers, John Millay on Preps, Jeff Diamond, the former Vikings general manager, on the Vikings. We have Lavelle, Roy Smalley, and myself on baseball, Kevin Gorg on hockey, Bardown Beauties on hockey. We have a lot of shows. Check them out. Don Mitchell's show had a really great guest this week. Check that out as well. When you find a show you like, please subscribe to your favorite podcast app. And we appreciate you listening. We'll talk to you this week.